Welcome, divas and dudes. It's so great to have you. What a treat to be back. It's July, the hottest month. Well, I guess next to August, right? And I'm just reeling from my wonderful trip of California when, seriously, it didn't get above 72. We actually got cold. I forgot what that was like. I hardly even could bring myself to pack a jacket, and I'm glad I did. So what I want to do today is really share with you one of the tools that we miss. We forget how important it is. I want to surprise you a little today with a couple of studies. One that's going to show that athletes don't even drink enough. Another that a very new study is showing some exciting news that staying hydrated can slow the progress of aging. How cool is that? I'm all up for that one. And surprisingly, even when our sodium level is within normal, it still has this little effect. So we'll go over that a little too. So water, it bathes every cell of our body. We forget that, right? We think, I'll just sip away, or I know I should drink, so I'm going to. It bathes every cell, and it's required for every chemical reaction. So that really puts it into perspective. And what I want to help you see is that the myriad of reactions or requirements in our body that water is so integral for. It allows for higher metabolism, for a healthy heart. It promotes weight loss. I'm going to show you another study that, wow, it helps in every way with weight loss, especially in middle-aged, older women. None of those in this room. But we want every opportunity to help our bodies, and water is absolutely it. Better digestion, more energy, better mood. So actually in studies where we look at mood and brain function, if you're a little bit dehydrated, I'm going to tell you how we measure that in a minute, but wow, it improves skin. It even prevents headaches, and even the most obvious, it helps you avoid dehydration. But I think optimum hydration is something that we need to learn more about. So, how much do we need? Can you see that okay? The human body can do pretty well for several weeks with no food. You've probably heard this before, right? And how long can the body last without any water? Not long at all. 3 days. And I'm going to guess some people less, some people more. Of course, I don't want to know that statistic, but let's just suffice to say that we can go a long time without food. What reserves do we have in our body that help us survive for a long time? Yes, and muscle, right? And glycogen and blood sugar. So, if we really nail this down, we have enough glycogen and blood sugar in our body to probably last a good 72 hours. Maybe a little more, depending on if you're an athlete and you've trained those shelves to get built, right? After we use up all of our glycogen, then we start breaking down a blend of muscle and fat. But muscle likes to get broken down a little bit more because you get sugar out of that muscle. And of course, when we break down fat, do we get any sugar? No, it's just plain old fat. So our brain says, okay, I'm going to burn a little muscle and a little fat so that I can survive, the several weeks. But we don't have any reserve like that for water. We don't have any reserve like that for water. We end up using important hydration components of our organs. So check this out. The brain is 75% water. Wow, that makes you want to drink, right? Blood, 85%. Skin, 80%. Muscle, 75%. Bones, 25%. We don't think of our bones as being watery, but it's so critical that it bathes the cells. We often think so high level. We look at a table and it feels solid. We look at bones and it feels solid. But when we look in the microscopic view, it's anything but solid. And so when we think about bones, and that truly there's plenty of water necessary for optimum regeneration and even bone metabolism, so we got to have water there too. The liver, if the liver becomes dehydrated, many functions are lost. What does the liver do? It digests food. It packages and repackages all the food that we ate and delivers it throughout the body. So if you know of anybody that's ever said, gosh, my labs show or my doctor says I have fatty liver, that means that the liver is all clogged up. Something's wrong and the digestion process is clogged up. It might be fat, it probably is, only because the fat is the hardest macronutrient to digest. It takes the most work in the liver. But let's suffice to say that if you're not getting enough hydration in your body, the liver is definitely going to get clogged up. Not, most likely with fats, but maybe even other toxic chemicals. What else does the liver do? It cleanses our blood, right? So for all those liver cells to work properly, there needs to be enough hydration so that not only can we digest, prepackage, repackage, and deliver the nutrients, it also takes the contents out of the blood that are bad. We definitely want that. So hydrate is super important. So when we think of making a better machine, I went back to this slide because I really wanted to talk a little bit about this study. And I didn't really give you all the notes because sometimes studies can get really long and complicated. But I wanted to bring it so that if any of you wanted to take a picture of it, you could. But good hydration linked to healthy aging. And really what they find is that you get your CBC done, your regular lab work, and you notice that there's a sodium level on there. And usually the doctors will look at your labs and they'll say, oh, everything's fine. Meaning what? Oh, everything's in range, right? But there's a range. So then you are a very conscientious patient and you say, yeah, but doctor, what does it mean if I'm on the very end, the high end or the low end? And he'll say, oh, nothing, don't worry about it. This study from 2022 is changing that, because now what we're finding is sodium levels that are even a little bit up are now correlated with shorter lifespan. And it all stems around our heart function. So adults who stay well hydrated appear to be healthier, develop fewer chronic conditions such as heart and lung disease, and live longer than those who may not get sufficient fluids, according to the National Institutes of Health. So what they did was they used data gathered from 11,255 adults. And you know, the science girl in me says, okay, if we're going to believe any kind of research, it's got to be a big population. Does that fit? Oh yeah, that's a lot. And it has to be over a long period of time. We can't just take one little anecdotal, study and say, oh, that's a blanket statement, let's slap it on, which you're going to find coming up. And it's kind of my mantra, if you've been around me long enough, you know that this story repeats itself, that science takes some time, 30 years to come up with this data. And so, gosh, it's like, well, you hurry up already because I'm already 58 and I want to know all the things now so I can minimize my aging and maybe I'll never gain another year in my skin and my organs. But the good news is this research is really valuable. So over a 30-year period, researchers analyzed links between serum sodium levels, which go up when fluid intake goes down. So inversely related, right? Your sodium gets more concentrated if you're not drinking enough water, right? That makes sense. So they found that the adults' sodium serum levels at the higher end of normal range were more likely to develop chronic conditions and show signs of advanced biological aging. Yikes! And those with serum sodium levels even in the medium range. So it's one thing to go, oh yeah, it's very at the end, way at the top. But even in the middle of the range. So where does my brain go? It's like, dang, I think we better change those normal ranges. And I mark my words, I bet you in the next 10 months, that's going to happen. It kind of happened with blood sugar levels. We used to think that anything above 110 was fine. And again, if you've talked with me for 5 minutes around blood sugar levels, I don't like anybody to be above 80, especially at fasting. If it gets into 91, 95, 101, that's something that we want to address right away. And that's going to happen, I believe, with sodium levels. So the results suggest that proper hydration may slow down aging and prolong a disease-free life, said Natalia Dmitrieva, who's the PhD that ran the study. And remember, this is really a pooling of data and kind of combing through it and learning more information about it. And those are sometimes the best data because we don't have preconceived notions. You know, we just are going in and we're looking at data and we're looking at correlations, which I think is really cool, that we have database systems out there so that we can really learn and relearn information from it. So the study author and researcher in the Laboratory of Cardiovascular Regenerative Medicine at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, so NHLBI, which is part of the NIH, so, you know, pretty well-respected entity. The study expands on research the scientists published in March of 2022, again, which found links between the atherosclerosis study and heart disease. So we know that some form of arteriosclerosis or atherosclerosis is part of aging. That just means that the arteries get a little bit stiffer. Well, now in the previous talks, we learned about calcification that makes that worse, right? So then we think, gosh, how does that relate to maybe dietary or supplemental calcium thickening or hardening of those arteries? And then the second kind of smoking gun that I'm presenting to you today is, sodium levels can be directly related to the progression and the exacerbation of the thickening or hardening of the arteries. So doesn't it make you just want to go guzzle down some water? I hope it does. So again, I brought the whole study, but I wanted to just kind of read to you that little summary. And it does hyperlinks to several of the other research pieces that were used in gathering this data. So I just love the fact that, this little blurb was made for children. You can see down there, good parenting. I never saw that when I was raising my boys, darn it. I mean, we knew it was important to drink water, but we're just learning more every decade for sure. So let's look at 15 reasons why our bodies can't live without water. Primary component of saliva. So if you know of somebody that has a condition that has dry mouth or dry eyes, it's very uncomfortable. Not to mention, it's very difficult to actually digest food. The saliva is primarily water, so 85% water, and we need the electrolytes in the saliva in order to break down the food particles and to get the salivary amylase activated, which is the first stage of digestion. So those of you that, again, know me well, I will say it's better to chew your food, don't just drink your food. I'm still going to stand by that because that whole mastication process increases the production of saliva. That's a really good thing. Water regulates body temperature. And again, this seems like, oh yeah, for sure, but we kind of brush it off. And it's so fine-tuned. Our kidneys are so important in the aldosterone system, which is just a hormone system that very closely regulates how much our body allows pee to be excreted versus held onto. And so regulating body temperature, we need enough water to make sure that we have plenty to bathe the cells, cool the cells, and make sure we have enough electrolytes to let all that happen. It's pretty cool. Also, it protects the spinal cord, tissues, and joints. Again, we forget that. If we have achy joints, stiff, as we get older, it's not as critical really to stretch. It's more critical, especially in the beginning of the day, to do rhythmic motion. And why is that? Well, to get the fluid around the synovial joints so that we have more padding, because as we age, the padding decreases. So again, part of optimal aging is to get plenty of cushion around those joints so we don't have to complain about aches and pains after a hike. So for sure important. Necessary for the elimination of waste, of course, urine, feces, perspiration. Some people more than others lose a lot of hydration even from breathing. So you kind of forget, but even in the night, if you are someone that sleeps on your back and your mouth opens and you wake up and your mouth is really dry, you have lost so much water just by having your mouth open. Of course, we mentioned aids in digestion. So not just the salivary amylase, but it's absolutely critical in all of the enzymes that your pancreas produces. And so diluting the food and making those enzymes, very critical, can't be done without plenty of water. And the last one I think is fun too, improves physical performance. And you'll see that another one of the studies that I'm talking about looks at soccer players. And it's so amazing to me that adult soccer players still have a lot to learn about their body cues. And sadly, the coaches, even as kids are growing up through the ranks of sports, coaches are not good at talking about hydration and nutrition. They sort of give it lip service, but they don't really emphasize it. Now, I bet you that would change if they knew how much it would impact their performance. If they were going to win, well, let me tell you, I bet that coach would really emphasize it. And so the results of this study were really fun. The absolute and relative increase in drinking water were associated with significant loss of body weight and fat over time. And so this is that little study that I was sharing, and it's amazing. In a little background from this abstract says that data from short-term experiments suggests that drinking water may promote weight loss by lowering total energy intake and or altering metabolism. The long-term effects of drinking water on change in body weight and composition are unknown. And so what that's saying is, well, we think that if you drink water, you'll not eat as many calories, right? We've probably been told that, before your meal, drink a glass of water and you won't be so full. Strangely though, there's more to it. And of course it's saying unknown because they have to do more studies to really understand it. But when they adjust some of the factors in the study, they realize that it's not just muting appetite. There's something metabolically going on. And remember that little box earlier, it actually increases metabolism. So my theory is it's probably improving our endocrine system. So our body is working better. We're burning at a higher fuel, octane, if you will, because we've got all cylinders burning. So I love it. Really, to give you a little more insight onto this study, they looked at women ages of 48 through 72, so a pretty good range. And they gave one group, they gave both groups the same calorie level, and they let one group drink ad lib, and the other group had to drink, and I think it was 70 ounces of water in the day. And they also asked them to say, okay, well, throughout the day, we want to know what your hunger scale is. Are you hungry, very hungry, not hungry at all? They kind of gave a little guideline. And strangely, the group that didn't get the water, they could ad lib drink, complained that they were hungry more. So, of course, what we would think, not really strange at all. But we saw that the group that drank the water not only didn't feel hungry, but lost more weight. So, it's fun to realize that absolute and relative. So absolute weight loss was better in the group that were told you have to drink this much water, versus relative, meaning that they've sort of factored out the other changes in the study. So lower weight and lower fat over time. So it also improves blood oxygen circulation. Improves immune function. So again, it kind of still goes back to the healthy gut. So when there's enough water in the tissues, the gut can do a better job. And of course, we mentioned temperature regulation. What about energy levels? Have you ever felt lethargic, headachy, or if you've been out, say, at a baseball game and you're out in the sun a lot and you didn't really do anything, but you sure feel lethargic? That is relating to a little bit about what we would see on this handout, and it's really relating to energy, cognitive function, mood, when you have a mild form of too much heat. So if we start at the bottom and work up, heat rash is a red cluster of small blisters. Now, I've seen this on kids. Has anybody ever had that happen to them? Yes, maybe? Yeah, as a kid. Especially on the thinner areas of the skin, so elbows, chest. And so, again, the treatment makes sense. Stay in a cool, dry place, keep the rash dry, which I think is sometimes counterintuitive, and also to use a powder, because we don't want that rash to get worse. So adding a powder helps to protect the skin from losing more moisture. Sunburn, of course, you can see the sunburn, but sometimes it's faint, it's subtle. It could just be your skin feels warm. As fair as I am, I would hardly ever get sunburn, but I would definitely get sun damage. And so it's because I didn't even have enough pigment to really protect my skin. So you have to be really careful with sunburn. Going up one more level, heat cramps. This one's a little more obvious, right? Heavy sweating during intense exercise, muscle pain, or spasms. And this is kind of the spot between heat cramps and heat exhaustion where sometimes even the sweating mechanism turns off. So you no longer have the ability to sweat. So here in heat cramps, it says heavy sweating. There is sort of a point when your body says it's giving up and it's not going to try to sweat anymore to cool. And so that's when it's very dangerous. In fact, I read in the paper, it was probably just before I left for California, so it was probably Thursday, a gentleman died here in San Antonio. Did anybody see this article? He was a construction worker, and he was drinking energy drinks, probably not a lot of water. Energy drinks, he said, I feel really faint. He sat down and he fainted and they could not revive him. He was in his 20s, so young guy, and it didn't have to happen. That's from heat stroke. And so the heavy sweating can turn off. You can be cold and pale and clammy skin. When that happens, now you're in a cascade of events that your body goes through. It's kind of like the fight or flight, where you have a rapid heartbeat, you feel nausea, muscle cramps, tiredness or weakness, dizziness, headache, and of course the passing out. And sometimes when you get to that phase, you cannot just throw a bunch of water into that person. It won't even be absorbed fast enough. So sometimes they'll have to go via IV. So, what to do column over here says sip on water, put cool, wet cloths on the body. And that's really to get the core temperature down before you try to rehydrate them. And then, of course, the very top one, heat stroke, that's the one where, it's really severe, and calling 911 is probably the first thing to do. Of course, moving the person to a cooler environment, and the goal is to get their body temperature down, not to try to hydrate them right away. But it's a good little reminder that it can happen, and it can happen quickly. So sometimes we kind of ignore the symptoms of fatigue or headache. I don't think we would ignore dizziness and nausea and vomiting. I think we would get ourselves out of that environment. But this young gentleman, it happened so fast, he did not have those symptoms. So yeah, it's scary. IBS, constipation, those are really such a component of getting enough fluid in your intestines. And again, when I'm working with cancer patients that are in the middle of treatment, they've just started, we're trying to ward off nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation. The main thing I try to help them do is get enough fluids in their gut. Water is just one, though. Remember, we also have foods that help hold on to water. And you'll see in a minute here, some of these products actually try to do that with some soluble fibers. And we need electrolytes. And so I encourage the folks that are going through treatment, and even us, if we feel like we tend to sweat a lot or tend to not sweat well, sometimes having enough electrolytes, which includes sodium. So back in the day in football practices, coaches were known to give salt tablets. I don't know if anybody's old enough to know about that, but that was a very small attempt at helping to make sure the body held onto water, because the GI tract needs that water. Otherwise, it's the first sign of the fight or flight and losing the body's ability to cool, and then going through this cascade of events that's really shutting the body down. So for sure, the GI tract is a really key spot. So what you'll see in a minute when we talk about these products is the food manufacturing companies try to hit all the buttons. And of course, what I want you to have as a takeaway is we don't want to ever get behind the 8 ball. And so chugging a bunch of water before you run out to do a hike or an outside event, a baseball game, is not the best approach, because your kidneys are going to pee it out faster than your tissues can absorb it. And so having a gut that is well versed in soluble fiber helps those tissues stay well hydrated. Somebody that's chronically dehydrated can easily develop irritable bowel syndrome because they don't have enough hydration. So, do we know how to drink? Do we know when to drink? And this is where I thought it was so interesting. So I'll share with you the soccer players. But an issue that's commonly seen amongst professional athletes is the prevalence of being dehydrated even before they start their training or their competition. So again, this was a gathering of a large data population, both of adolescents, of college athletes, and then even professionals. And what they did was they measured the urine, basically how concentrated the urine is. And they realized that I'm going to show you here, 54% of female and 56% of male soccer players were found to be dehydrated before their training. And then, so that really the urine specific gravity is a technical way for us to look at our pee in the toilet and say, what color is it? So it should be very light. Now, again, you can still be dehydrated and have very light pee, again, because you've gotten behind the 8 ball. And so that's why some of these products try to give you minerals and soluble fiber and, some other ingredients so that you can get past that rough spot. But I was just so amazed. It was also found that relying on self-assessment of thirst perception to guide fluid intake was not an appropriate indicator for hydration status, meaning that if you wait till you're thirsty, and you've probably heard this, right? You can't wait till you're thirsty to drink because our oral mucosa is not the first area of our body to register dryness. We do interface because, of course, we talk and we breathe and our mouth is open, but there's a really interesting situation where people get dehydrated, their sodium level creeps up, meaning their body is too concentrated, and they don't feel it, they don't notice it. This is, I hope you can see this, this is the fluid loss by the athletes. So this is that same study. The average sweat rate for each player was 27 ounces in an hour. That is a lot, right? 27 ounces in an hour, plus or minus 14. So in all fairness, there was a lot of individual variation. So what position the athlete played, a lot of individual differences, granted, but I think that's still amazing. Similar to the average sweat loss per training session, the average sweat rate was not statistically different between the field positions in this one study. So whether they were a goalie or they're a halfback. Now, other studies, they did show a difference, but this particular one. So I just think it's amazing how much fluid loss we were able to track. So when it comes to water and the types of products out there, we have so many to choose from. That's really why I wanted to put this topic on our agenda, because every time I go to H-E-B, I notice there's a new fancy water. Anybody notice that? Yeah, I mean, look at them all. And this isn't even half of them. I ran out of money before I could buy them all. In fact, the ones I'm going to show you in the slides, I want you to take notes on, and if they sound intriguing to you, please knock yourself out. But when we look at these products that are on the market, I want you to really put on your thinking cap and remember all of kind of my stories around marketing. They really want to attract the customer that is super conscientious, willing to pay a good penny, and using oftentimes a little drop of research that needs a lot more study, but could be interesting, and so I always say, let's balance risk benefit. So what's the risk of trying some products? Well, you could not like it. It could give you diarrhea. It could be too expensive, or you could really love it and not be able to afford it. And then you have to decide, am I going to give up my coffee or my favorite beverage that, is $4 a bottle? So, I think it's fun to see what the marketing companies come up with, because they are always looking for cutting edge ways to market to us some fun new products that we want to spend money on. So the Rowdy Mermaid, this one, and hopefully you can see it, it talks about immunity boosting. And I know Miss Elaine has tried this one. And they're quite tasty. Which flavor did you try, Elaine?
I honestly don't know.
Oh, okay, maybe not sure.
It might still be in my refrigerator.
Or maybe you didn't try it. Well, so this
I've actually tried it.
they're mild flavors for sure. This one is kind of a matcha, so mild flavors for sure. This one is talking about adaptogens. There's a fun term for you. Anybody hear that term before? Kind of falls into the superfood category. It's supposed to be like mushrooms are thought of as adaptogens. Ergogenic aids is another term, and so it's supposed to have some special powers, some special qualities that help boost whatever it is you're trying to do. So help boost hydration, make it better than, and what would be the standard to measure by? Good old plain water.
So the best way to get around all of this, you get a bottle of, not a thing of Morton Light. Morton Light salt from HEB has sodium and potassium in equal amounts. 1 pinch of that and 2 pinches of regular salt in a liter of water is your electrolyte solution, and squeeze in some lemon juice or any flavor that you like. That is your basic electrolyte solution.
I love it. Coming from our renal doctor, thank you so much.
Say that again. So what was the first thing?
Morton Light. It is 50% sodium chloride, 50% potassium chloride. So 1 pinch of that and 2 pinch, it's roughly 4.5 grams per liter of water.
So
that's half normal saline. That's the electrolyte you use in sweating. So if you're sweating a lot, that is like when Veronica goes to beehives, this is what I tell her to drink.
So let's keep going because you're going to see some of these numbers in there.
Are these healthy? I mean, I'm over here taking notes.
Yeah,
Are these
definitely take notes.
I just don't want to make notes that they're healthy if they're not.
Right. I think there are good qualities in all of these.
Okay.
And what I really said down on the bottom of your little handout is, of course we want to watch out for excess calories. We may or may not want to use caffeine, and added special ingredients can or cannot affect you. So, like I said, sometimes they'll cause GI problems. But experiment with some of the new waters on the market and pick the ones that work for you. So I don't want to suggest that any of them are bad. Some of them I think will be better than others. So the remedy, this one is a cacao essentials. Now notice this, it has a lot of things added. So not only does it have some of the adaptogens, but it also is kind of like a meal replacement, right? So it has protein. But this remedy brand is very well received because of its amazing flavor and very low in sugar. And notice down below that it gives a lot of the headers of, that it's non-GMO and it's gluten-free. And, those help it sort of be marketed to a broader scope of people. Is it relevant to the beverage? Not so much in most of these. The next one over is the natural lemonade. So nutritious hydration. I love the fact that it kind of walks you through simple ingredients, raw and fresh, retains micronutrients. So your thought process around that is, well, if you cut my orange or cut my lemon, doesn't it lose its vitamin C? So it's using some adaptogenic science to maintain its nutrients. And it tastes delicious. The next one over is one that I think if you look a little closer, you'll see that it might have a little red flag, for me anyway. And that's because it has 0 sugar. So what comes to mind right away? Yeah, it's going to have non-nutritives. And again, some people might feel like it's just fine and it's a really strong drink. Compared to this particular lineup, that is a big, get you. So if you're maybe a little hungry and really thirsty and you want something to kind of curb a sweet tooth, that would probably be the ticket. Look down below. It's natural energy. So that's going to tell me it probably has caffeine in it. It boosts metabolism. Do we know that caffeine does that? Absolutely. Yes. Supports fat loss, sharpens mental focus. Well, all of those are qualities of caffeine for sure. Now, my personal opinion is that if I drink that, my thirst is not quenched. It has such a high osmolality, meaning that there's so much stuff in there, both flavor and adaptogens and stuff that my thirst is not quenched. So this might be something that you enjoy in the afternoon after your workout, but you've already had plenty of water. It could be good. Olipop is quite a sensation. I've been following it for a couple years. Finally, HEB has it on its shelves. And it's a very interesting beverage because it has some prebiotics added to it. So here we enter into a whole nother add-in. So we've got the ergogenic aids, we've got minerals, we have sugars of various kinds, we even have protein, and then we've got some prebiotics. And we know that our gut does well with a little boost every once in a while of some prebiotics. I'm not as much of a fan of probiotics. That would be like the pills that you take, or pills, or maybe even yogurt is a prebiotic, but a probiotic is where you're actually taking in a lot of the active yogurt cultures or the active cultures. The prebiotics support the healthy bugs you already have. So there's a very slight nuance there, but they're trying to add this in, again, with the idea of helping your gut be healthy. Here's another one, Kavita. And I wish Mary Tom was here because this is like her favorite drink. When she worked for us at Powers Bakery, I'd always treat her to a Kavita when I went to the store. So again, pro, very similar. This has bugs, so that's why I went ahead and called it probiotics. It's fermented. And then the big lineup, caffeine-free, sugar-free, dairy-free, GMO-free, and gluten-free. So again, sort of irrelevant. Again, if you look at the ingredients, you'd want to say, well, of course it doesn't have any gluten, right? Or dairy, because it's lemonade. It's a water with stuff added. But again, it kind of pulls in the less savvy shopper because, again, those terms live under the halo. So they're going to be tempted to spend their dollar on this product. Oops, let me go back. This one. So how about some caffeine with that? This has been a big craze for athletes, long endurance runners, anybody that wants a little boost of energy to get their workout done. Not only will they use traditional caffeine added in different amounts, they might even add an herbal like a taurine, or there's a couple of other ones that are herbals that actually do increase your metabolism and your heart rate. So I say pros and cons because if you are not familiar with working with caffeine, basically if you're not a coffee or a tea drinker and you have a couple of these, it could really upset your tummy. I can't tell you, when I was a coach for HEB and even Lifetime Fitness, we would, be passing out those goos and sports enhancers, and people would get sick. Some of it was from the caffeine, but some of it was also because it was just too concentrated. Again, that osmolality, they were already dehydrated. Because remember, even the smart athletes are probably dehydrated when they start their event. And they do those little goos, and it really messes with their tummy. So it causes that dumping syndrome. The body says, I can't deal with that, get it out of me. Yeah. So I'd say this one is interesting because it's trying to give you electrolytes. You have to mix it with water, and it has caffeine included. So you could mix it with extra water and probably be fine if you like that kind of product because it's really convenient. Propel is another one. I put this slide in because Gatorade has really been cutting edge in learning about how to hydrate. A lot of the studies have been done by Gatorade. And there's one interesting study that looks at Gatorade as the kind of the standard to compare all the other sports hydration products against. And some of the downsides of typical Gatorade is that it's too much sugar. Well, it really works for the football players and the athletes because they've been working so hard, they need that extra sugar. I can't tell you how many very thin cyclists I've worked with, and they're using this. And it's like, whoops, the missed opportunity. Do you think that their endurance is going to be improved? No, they need a boost of sugars to go along with their hydration. So the 0-calorie electrolyte replacement has a very small niche of value. Very small niche. So who would that be? It would probably be the the weekend exerciser, good water consumer already, the surplus of calories. Most of us can exercise 30 minutes or 45 minutes and not feel drained. We didn't use up all of our glycogen stores. But we're trying to replenish a little of electrolytes and we're really watching calories. That would probably be one to fit into that niche. Here's another one. This is brand new on the market. So it's got really, snazzy labeling, hydrating electrolyte mix made with nature's essential electrolytes from coconut water and pink Himalayan salt. So just like Sima was mentioning, salt is one of those basic electrolytes that we need added. I like the fact that it's, again, really easy to carry with you. Easy packaging because you can also dilute it however much you want, which is good. Pricey! Yes, so let's talk about that for a minute. And look at this one, Liquid IV. So I had to chuckle. I'm working on this during my little vacation. My sons are with me, which is such a treat. My older son, who is super athlete, pulls out one of these. I'm like, what? I'm studying that right now. And he's like, and I said, why do you pick that? And he's like, oh, because it tastes good. I'm like, well, that's an honest approach. And he can put it into his shaker bottle and add as much water as he wants. Now, they do come in different styles, but again, look at that price.
So they come in little packets.
Yes.
We drank that last year when I climbed that mountain in Alaska.
Oh, you got,
They were handing that.
and did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Good.
It was a lemon lime flavor.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this is a perfect example of some interesting technology. It's got a lot of dollar signs behind the R&D, and they're coming up with some interesting things. Again, it's always built on what did Gatorade set as the standard of practice in these products, and they get to learn from, what Gatorade did right and what it didn't do so right. Number one ingredient in this one, it's not the sugar-free one, pure cane sugar. They didn't even get organic on that one. They just throw it up there and said pure cane sugar. Dextrose, which is what? Another sugar. It's a little different size of molecule. So the rationale is that the athlete wants sustained and quick absorption of sugars. So dextrose is small, ready to jump right into the bloodstream, and the other sugars take a little longer to break down. Citric acid, salt, potassium, sodium again. So they have these different binders to the minerals. And then I had to do a lot of research on silicon dioxide. That just sounds wrong to me. I wanted to find something wrong with that. Like, no, that can't be good. And I did quite a lot of study, and I can't find anything that says, it's not good. Now, what is true is that the FDA puts it under GRAS. What's GRAS? GRAS. Generally recognized as safe. I know, right? We all go, oh. And so they don't know, right? They do a little bit of study, but it's basically, like tiny bits of sand. It's even like a derivative of glass. All those things sounded terrible to me, but I couldn't find anything that said, yeah, don't have silicon dioxide in any of your products. Now, I still feel like, I don't really want it, but the jury's out on whether or not it's actually, contraindicated. But it just sounds bad. And then we have this coffee fruit extract. That one kept me going the whole airplane ride because I was so curious. My favorite use of caffeine, as I've written here, is stuff that we know. There's nothing more simple than brewed coffee to get a nice little jolt of caffeine. And I probably have told you this story, so forgive me if you've heard it too many times, but I have trained so many athletes that have never tried a cup of coffee before their workout. And then they try it and they just want to hug me because they have more energy. They have their pain threshold has been lifted and they feel like $1 million. Not so with the pre-workouts, the products that put so much stuff in there that, again, that osmolality goes up a little bit too much and they start feeling not so good. So coffee and tea with that pure caffeine, personally, I've had great success with for people that want to have a little boost of their energy. So anyway, the coffee fruit is a whole new area of study. So when they gather the coffee bean, has anybody ever seen a coffee bean or a coffee tree? It's absolutely beautiful. It has a flower, and when the bean is picked, the little flower gets thrown away, and there's a little piece of, I don't know, I guess fruit that goes with that. So they're studying that, and it kind of makes sense to me that this fruit is going to have some polyphenols, some antioxidants, some great stuff because it comes from a tree and it's a fruit. I mean, that makes sense, right? Just like blueberries and pomegranates. So why wouldn't we want to study it? There's been some glitches because it spoils really fast. So this extract has been studied because they can do some processing right at the plant or the field and preserve this extract and see if we can get any, pluses from it. And it's kind of exciting. I mean, there's some interesting study around this coffee fruit extract. So it's gonna be around. I think we're gonna see more of it. Oops, let me go back. Again, this whole IV thing. So let's dig into that a little bit, because coming out of 2020 and COVID, people were so sick and trying to get better, and what kind of grew from that time is these neighborhood spots where you could go get an IV for hydration. Have you heard of that? And of course, we, patients, we know about getting IVs for hydration. We know that all too well, but it became a thing. And now people just go get IV for vitamins, for hydration, for la la la, and it's a huge money pit. And that's all I know so far. I have not found anything that's redeeming. But what's interesting is that this whole brand is kind of spinning off that idea that, if you get it right into the veins, it must be better than anything else, right? I mean, that kind of gives us that perception. Faster hydration than water alone. And that, again, remains to be seen. There is some new technology as well where they're putting some little tails on those minerals to see if they can get fluid into the cells faster. So again, that's a study that has to happen. The one study that all this liquid IV is working on with the coffee fruit is one study of 25 people that showed a little bump in improvement. And now it's, a multi-million-dollar product. One study of 25 people. So, we don't know that unless we really dig in. And when we look at the products, it looks so cool, and it's really kind of helping us understand that, if it goes into the veins, it must be great. You can see, I didn't get a good picture of it, but the power, the CTT, that's the new technology with the electrolytes that they're hoping are going to help the cells absorb water even better. So into the vein, or use a CTT, technology, whatever you can do to get it better, faster, stronger. This one I thought was kind of cool. Now again, so expensive. I mean, so expensive. Now you are getting 12 servings of, 20 ounces each. And of course, I have to do a little side note that my favorite Pellegrino is not cheap either now in the glass bottle. So I don't know that I could even complain about this price. But what I like is the ingredients are pretty clean. Citric acid, here's inulin. Anybody remember what inulin is? That's a soluble fiber. You find it in yogurts, right? And some cereals. It's a product that helps hold on to water. It's a molecule that absorbs water and it brings it into the cell. So inulin, and here's sodium carbonate, potassium carbonate, some natural flavors. They even go so far as to add some vitamins. So we've got vitamins E, vitamin C, and then biotin, which is B7. And then they are using stevia as the sweetener. I love the name. It's definitely marketed for women, don't you think? The way it's kind of soft and pretty versus this one, guy, right? Guy. My son had that one right there. I couldn't imagine him buying this pretty one. Oops. But I do think it's so interesting that they're quite pricey. And again, they're really building on the marketing strategy to lure in people that are super conscientious about our health. And, when we think about It came from Germany, so it's, the whole world. It's not just the US. The whole world is loving this technology around how do we hydrate our bodies better. It even goes into how to prepare it. And excuse me. So either 14 or 20 ounces. You could use sparkling water, which I thought was kind of cool. And really the sparkling water idea, I think, is such a great one, because when you get a true sparkling water, it's, taken from the source. Again, I kind of love the idea of Perrier and Pellegrino and some of the other ones that are naturally sparkling. They come up from the earth and they have all the minerals in them. Anybody like a mineral water or sparkling? So the bubbly is kind of energizing. If you open the bottle and you kind of have it around, you're going to be more likely to drink it because it's a nice big bottle. It's going to remind you to drink it. If you have to mix a powder, you might be less likely to do that, especially if it's going to be in bubbly water that might go flat. I could just see that being a stumbling block to get more water in. And when we think about how much water is the right amount, anybody want to guess? If we think about all these different products, I gave you a little hint here. 20 ounces before lunch, 20 ounces before dinner, 20 ounces before bed. I mean, that's a lot of water. And so the good news is when you have foods that are rich in soluble fiber and you drink other beverages, hopefully not a lot of sugar added, and your water, and you sip it throughout the day, it's doable. We can't always rely on our thirst. We can get a pretty good idea if we look in the toilet and see that it's very light in color. Also, if we don't have any GI problems, that's also a good rule of thumb. So no constipation, no diarrhea, no bloating, all those IBS symptoms. The first thing I have people do when they come to me with IBS symptoms is I monitor their hydration. It's as simple as that. And get on a routine. The first thing you do in the morning is have some water. I personally love having some lemon in there. It's in the summer, I get ice cold water with lemon. If it's, in the winter, I make it hot. I don't add salt. If I was a really heavy sweater and I knew I was going to do a cycling event that I was going to really lose a lot of water, I might use one of these special drinks. But again, I have a sort of a barrier because I don't like the flavors, especially the diet sweeteners. But they're coming out with some that are kind of cool. So look at this one. It is all organic. It's cane sugar, lemon juice or lemon juice powder, pink Himalayan salt, stevia, rice. There's your soluble fiber. It's making it thick. It's giving it a good consistency. Here they've used monk fruit as the sweetener. Banana powder, also a little bit of a thickener. Superfood powders, so blueberry, raspberry, and tart cherry. I was really impressed with all those. And I'm sorry I don't have those. But I kind of stopped when I got all these. But I want you to take notes and take pictures and let me know which ones you try. Because if we can do 20 ounces before lunch, I could see us doing some green tea or some coffee, your lemon water, you could easily get up to 20. And then at lunch, having some soluble fiber, which would be a whole grain, and maybe a cooked vegetable or a raw vegetable. It's going to add, of course, you're not going to really count it as your ounces, but you could kind of soften the edges on, how rigid the 20 ounces before lunch had to be or 20 ounces before dinner, if your diet is high in fruits and vegetables. If you're following a keto diet and you're eating a lot of meat, you're definitely going to need all this ounces of water, because the meats and the high fats are almost a detractor of the water. Your gut needs a lot more water to process those foods. Okay? So lastly, the marketing savvy on this I thought really won. Feel the power of organic rapid hydration. Orgain Hydro Boost was handcrafted to provide clean and effective hydration using only food-based, high-quality organic ingredients. Made to meet the World Health Organization's guidance on fast hydration, the Orgain Hydro Boost delivers 5 times the electrolytes and is enhanced with superfoods. This cleaner, better-for-you hydration mix is both delicious and energizing. don't you just want to run out and try that? And now I'm really sad I didn't bring it for you. It's like, darn, I really should have just forgotten all these other ones and tried them. The reason why I wanted to get the ready to drink ones is I thought it'd be so easy for us to sample. And also, with the powdered ones, you get to pick your water. And so that's a fun one too. If you know you like distilled water, so no minerals at all, that has a whole different flavor. It's kind of nice too. And then the mineral water that is still versus bubbly, again, different personality altogether. And so it really adds the dimensions to this whole choice of, gosh, what should I drink? Cleaner ingredients on this side. I'm sorry, it's a little hard to see, but powders made from organic cane sugar, organic lemon juice powder, pink Himalayan salt, and they, kind of list all the highlights of what makes it so special. All those, non-things, non-GMO, gluten-free. Of course, it should be. It's just a liquid. And of course, vegan. So there you have it. What I'd love to do is be able to have you sample all these, take your notes home too, and let me know if you try one of the powders and let me know what you think. I think it'd be fun to do our own little research study to see of the divas and dudes, which product seems to be the easiest to use, the best tasting, and does it really leave you feeling refreshed, energized, and extra happy, and thinner and wiser and younger. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.